Hey everybody, it's Scott here, and today I thought I'd bring you a video just detailing how to fully magnetize your baneblade. So when you get your baneblade tank box set, it'll come with 8 different build variations. The way the box is made is, for the most part, for you to be able to choose one of those variations, maybe two. But we don't want that. We want all 8, so this is just a quick tutorial for the easiest way using the least magnets and the least tools to get your baneblade fully magnetized. Feel free to modify this procedure as you like, what works for you. You don't need to do exactly what I did, but I'm going to show you the tools that I use for the job. So, first of all, obviously, razor blade clippers. I just use a normal razor blade just because it's easy to get razor blade replacements. And the back of it's pretty good for filing off mold lines. A file, a long tool of some sort. I just use the back of a paintbrush. You can use some, like, whatever molding tools if you want. A drill. I specifically use the Army Painter drill, and then also with the extra drill bit set that Army Painter sells. And then the biggest drill that comes with that is just big enough for the smallest magnet from the Army Painter's Assorted Magnets kit. It comes with these 2 different sizes of magnets, the really small ones and then some medium-sized ones, and then I also just bought some slightly bigger magnets. So just a good assortment of, big to small to medium-sized magnets, nothing super huge. So if you want to use specifically what I used the Army Painter style drill and drill bits, and then their magnets, except for the larger magnets that are a different brand. And then obviously your plastic glue and some super glue. I like to use just a Citadel Games Workshop plastic glue, works well, there's no issue with it. And then I like to use the Gorilla super glue gel. It's just really strong and it's not like watery. It'll keep those magnets in place, because this is what this will be used for, is the magnets. Alright, so a couple of things that I suggest doing, I guess one thing I suggest doing before you even start building the baneblade is just opening up the instructions and just kind of looking at each of the different variants to kind of get an idea of what parts you're going to need to reuse. So here we can see that building the tracks in the bottom of the tank is fine for every single one of these builds. The main thing that you're going to need to worry about are these highlighted areas about not gluing and magnetizing. For the most part, not quite entirely, so don't just start gluing stuff together. But yeah, I just kind of flip through the instructions and look at what's shared, and then I just circled things that I wanted to magnetize. And maybe you don't care about having the choice between the multi-melta and the bolter. You can make that decision. Maybe you want to magnetize some things so they move, whatever. So yeah, I just went through and I circled things that I didn't want to magnetize. Obviously, this piece you don't want to magnetize. So yeah, I suggest just go walking through and take a look at that. Alright, so here is the main build here. This is going to be the base of which you will build all the rest of the tank variations on top of. Very simple to create this. The only thing that's magnetized on here is these guns right here. And how they work is basically there was a peg that went basically through these holes and through a hole inside of here. And I just stuck magnets and all that. So yeah, they can just slide in and out. And the reason for even having that in the first place is that there is these bolters that you can switch them out with, which most people probably won't want to, but if you want to have that option, you can magnetize them. You can not magnetize it, doesn't really matter. That's the only thing on this main chassis right here that you can see that needs to be magnetized to have all 8 variations of the tanks. So with that out of the way, I'm going to now show you the rest of the pieces that you will use to create these separate options, not counting the barrels of the guns, the barrel of the main cannon or the guns or whatever you want to call it. So you'll need this piece and this piece to create 2 of the options. All right. And you will need this piece, this piece, this piece, and this piece to create the other 4. I believe other 4. Maybe, no, it's the other 6. I'm going to show you the one that uses these first because it is the only one that requires modifications to the actual chassis, and that is just going to be these glued in sprue right here. I'm going to show you these 2 pieces first because they both go in the same spot. Basically, these pieces had pegs, or not pegs, but these things on both sides, and I just cut these down and I took these off so that I could slide them into these holes here and get them on these supports. So basically you just take this, kind of wiggle it in there, to that point, and then just push it down in there, and then that stays in there pretty snug. And then for the other variation, it's the same deal. Just kind of get it in there, and then stick that one side that has, oh, got it, like so. Then just this one side clicks in there, and that's snug, doesn't need any magnets. Okay, so from here, there is 6 different possibilities that we go with. I guess technically 2, but each of them lead to 3 separate versions of the tank. The first one is you take this piece, and as you can see, it is double-sided. The first variation is to flip it like this and set it in there, and this is why we need to glue these sprues in here. I just kind of filed down one side of the sprue, used the flat side up, and then scratched up the surface here, and then used some plastic glue to glue these sprues in. And then I just kind of used this setup right here while holding my finger here to keep this stable, to kind of line up where the sprues were going to go, and it seemed to work out really well. But yeah, you just need to be able to put that there, and then you put the cannon on top here, and actually you can put this piece on first. This little back piece can just rest there, and then the main part like that. And then the other way to build it, which leaves the other 3 options, is you simply flip this piece and it goes back here, and then this goes like so. The second option, or I guess it would be the third, that leads to the other 2 variations, is just replace that one piece with this piece like I showed before, and then you can just build this entire part and it just sits on there. It's very snug. You know, you're going to be able to move all these variations around the battlefield, this massive tank, around the battlefield without things flying and falling off and stuff like that. It doesn't need to be glued or magnetized. You can magnetize it if you want, but there's no reason. All right, now it's time for the barrel magnetization. So this variation uses 2 different barrels, which then creates 2 different versions of the tank. So all I did here is I just drilled out a hole in the center of this keyhole right here. Then I used my knife to kind of make it bigger. I stuck a little bit of green stuff in there just to hold the magnet in, and then I shoved 2 magnets in there, of these medium-sized magnets. Then I shoved a ball of green stuff up this barrel, and with it I put 2, or actually I just did 1 magnet, and to get it upright I stuck this paintbrush down the front of this barrel, just kind of positioned it. Then I also super glued it, and I super glued that too, by the way. I just stuck some super glue in there and I just let it dry, and it works great. There's no click because the magnets aren't lined up perfectly, which you might be able to figure out a way to do that, but the barrel is a little bit wobbly, but it's not going to fall off. You know, it gets on there. It's, you know, there's no issues with that. And then for the second option, I kind of just did the same thing. I drilled a hole, made it bigger with a hobby knife, and then I just took some green stuff and a magnet and some super glue in there, and this one works great as well. Okay, and then this one is by far the most variations, so we're going to start with the main part here. So for this, I took this main gun here, I shoved a ton, by far the biggest ball of green stuff, down in this hole right here, and I put magnets as centralized as possible. And then I took it, I left the peg on, I stuck it on the peg, and I positioned it how I wanted to. Then I took 4 big magnets and set them on the back of this brick here and just let it center itself. Position the cannon how I wanted it to be fixed. The green stuff, you know, was all flattened against it. And I basically just stood it upright like this. They didn't have the antenna on it. And I just let it dry overnight. Then later on, I filed down this peg to almost to the point where it doesn't have a lip, but it still has a tiny one. Then obviously I put super glue in this and on the magnets back here. And so this alone is a variant. Then there was something that I did make a mistake on though. I glued this piece onto this piece before putting a magnet back there. So what I should have done is put a magnet in the back of this barrel basically. And it would have helped a lot for the next part. But instead I had to get a little creative and I just drilled holes and put magnets, actually there's 2 of each, so 8 magnets around this, because then now there has to be a way to attach this piece. And this piece I just put a couple of magnets on the back of with some green stuff and some super glue so it can attach onto here. And that's another variant. And then the rest of the variants, besides the gun, this barrel and this barrel make up, and they can just pressure fit. So there's one of them, there's another, and then this is the final one. And this is all just pressure fit. Ooh. And here's the final one, and this is all just pressure fitted. And then here is the last gun here. It is just these 2 turrets, and this actually is meant to move. So what I did is I just stuck 3 magnets here and 3 magnets here into the back of this piece here, and it's strong enough to, if I can see from my phone, it's strong enough to just be held. Ooh, don't shake it. It's strong enough to hold in for just normal play. And you still get the, you know, posability of it. So there you go. That's how I magnetized all the variations for my baneblade. It seems like a big project, and it does take a while, don't get me wrong, but it's far less complicated than you would ever think. Now on to the more complicated part, painting it.